Heyo! Hello. Good day. Not even good evening, just good day. Because it is daytime and not nighttime when I usually stream. It's day o'clock and it's the middle of the week, and here we are, hanging out and talking about uh that thing, Novum, the new album. It's out. It came out a couple weeks ago now. And where am I here? Came out a couple weeks ago, and I hope you've been enjoying it. And today, I really have no uh, big plan or script. I just kind of want to go uh, vaguely chronologically, I guess, down the album list, down the track list, and we can chat about it, and I can get into some of the lore behind this all. Because there is lore, Novum is a concept album. Although in a different way than other albums of mine. Uh, so for me, there are kind of two distinct um, periods of my personal outwork, or my outputs of my personal work. I don't know, all the words are there, but the sentence is garbage. There's a period up until I guess this would have been 2018. Oh, no worries, Leah. Get that sleep. Enjoy your life. For me, so 2018 was when Etoile the Traveler, an EP that I made, came out. And that was the first collection of music I released post getting popular on YouTube. So up until then, I'd made much music. I'd released several albums, but no one listened to them because no one knew who I was or anything. I had no interest in people besides friends and family. And then 2018, Each the Traveler was, people who are subscribers on YouTube and people who follow me on social media are watching it, and they were there was many more eyes on those songs. And then all of songs. Since then, I've had people like you listening to my music, which is really cool and has never gotten old. So those, for whatever reason, Etoile the Traveler was a concept EP that had this kind of really loose story of Etoile the Traveler. Actually, wait, let's go to screen display here. So Etoile the Traveler, let's find some of this art. You gotta keep the artwork. Here we go. Etoile the Traveler. There he is, drawn by my friend from high school, Bryden Wu, who's a graphic designer. And so that, for whatever reason, I can't even remember why. I think I just thought it'd be a neat thing to do, was to make that a concept EP. And it had this little story of Etoile being dissatisfied with life on Earth and then going off into space to say, it's like, I'm going to do my own thing off in space. I'm going to go find true beauty out there. And then Etoile finds it and then realizes that it doesn't mean very much if they have no one to share it with. So they come back to Earth with perspective. Relatable. I mean, yeah. You hope as a musician that even the most fantastic stories are relatable in some way, shape, or form. Otherwise, they're totally disconnected from the human experience, and it's hard to get behind that, So that one was a concept EP, and then I just loved the framework of making a body of work follow a singular concept, that I've done it on other stuff since. So Jet and the Valkyrie, and then again with Novum. But the difference with Novum is that Etoile the Traveler and Jet and the Valkyrie, let's get that artwork up here. Why not? Let's go splitties. The difference between actually the big difference between there we go between Ito the Traveler and Jet and the Valkyrie and Novum is that Itwa and Jet are stories. Like they actually have a narrative in mind. And Novum doesn't. Novum does not follow one overarching narrative like these two collections do. Instead, Novum is about it's more of a setting thing. The concept of Novum as an album is to create the city of Novum. And then within that, there are a bunch of smaller stories that take place. So there was a comment on one of the tracks, on one of the lyric videos, which used the word, I can't remember what permutation of it was, but basically describing it as an anthology, which is correct. And it's kind of like a unified anthology in that they're all focused in this setting, and much of it is kind of focused musically speaking to fit in a similar theme, not as tightly as Itwa or Jet, but it's an anthologic, if that's a word, kind of an anthologic collection of music that takes place inside the city of Novum. So I even when I was, well, I guess we should go back to the start here, because where a better place to start is there? So Novum really started as an idea in almost probably more than 2 years ago. It was in late 2021, and late 2021, this was like 10 months after Jet and the Valkyrie had come out. And so I'd had time to sit with that. And then I had started tinkering around with new song ideas, and there were bits and pieces, but nothing really stuck until Welcome to Novum. So Welcome to Novum was the first track I conceptualized by a long shot, by many, many months. I had Welcome to Novum in mind, and then nothing else for a long time. The name I knew from way from the go-ahead. Yeah, it is a good first track to think about because it's the start of things, and it's such a tone setter. It was so helpful in trying to figure out what Novum was, to have Welcome to Novum be the first thing that I thought of 2 years ago. So the name Novum I already had, because it's kind of an Easter egg about all of my albums, is that they have a very specific naming scheme that they all follow. Let me pull this up on Spotify. Can I go all the way back? Yes, I can. Okay. So way back to 2009, my first ever collection of music. Actually, it's not. Oh, is this? It's the first collection I released as Finn MK, but I had a few other ones I wrote as a kid that aren't up on Spotify. They're too primordial even to be released as a hey, I made this, because I made those literally as a kid. So I would not be proud of releasing those today. So the first one was just called Album, because I was a very creative child. And then the second was called Album 2, Album 2, but in French. Why did I do that? There's no French at all in this track list, but there it is. And then I was like, I guess I'm sticking with this, Album Dritte, which is 3 in German. And I think at this point I had started to to get the feeling of like, okay, so if each next one is album, album to album dritte, maybe I should have this sequence continue in some fashion. Uh, so we're actually missing because it doesn't show singles and EPs. There's an album 4, the album 4 EP, and then album 5, which is also in German. By that point, I was like, okay, so the name of each next album is going to be the next number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it can be any language it needs to be so long as it is sequential alphabetically. So album, album deux, that's DE, then dritte is DR, album 4, FO, album 5, FU. So like if you put them all into one place, they are like album 2, dritte, so on, so on, so on. And they'll order themselves not only alphabetically, but chronologically, automatically, because they are alphabetically sequential. Album 5 is really was like, okay, I'm doing that. So then album Hock, which is some Southeast Asian language that I don't remember. I think it's kind of related to Thai, but it's 6 in that language. And then Itwa the Traveler came out. And this is when I stopped putting the album as the word in front of it, but I kept the naming scheme. So Itwa is 7 in a bizarre random sub-dialect regional thing from I cannot possibly remember where at this point. But it's 7. Jet is 8 in another one of these obscure Indonesian languages. And then those don't count. Those are all from YouTube stuff. And then Novum is 9 in Latin. That is where the name comes from. So it follows in the rich tradition of all of my albums being sequential alphabetically and numerically, by being Novum. And then that also worked for me as I had kind of started to conceptualize the city when I was starting to write Welcome to Novum. And I needed a name for the city. I was like, oh, well, Novum, obviously, because it's the name of the album. It's the setting that the album takes place in. Perfect. So despite many comments I have received and questions asked about, hey, it's called Novum, is it related to November? Not directly, but it comes from the same language, Novem being Latin, and us drawing from our calendar. Our calendar is basically the ancient Roman calendar. That's the last time that we did adjustments to it in sort of our Western classical tradition. And November is the 9th month. Now, if I was really smart, I would have released Novem in November because that wouldn't be nice and thematic. But it was done like mid-September. And I didn't want to just wait around for 2 months for no reason. So I was like, whatever, screw it. I'm just going to release it. So Novum is my 9th collection of music. That's just my original music. It's not tied. It's not a soundtrack album. It's not YouTube stuff like Write Me a Song or Film Songs Week. It just is its own from nothing. Here's my creativity. The 9th album, and that is where the name comes from. Now you know. So late 2021, I had tinkered around with Welcome to Novem, and I'd made the lyrics. And in writing those, I had really started to flesh out the idea of the city of Novem. Like I kind of had an idea of what was going on. I was like, okay. I had this ethereal space EP, and then I had this Nordic fantasy album. Now I need to do something that's very different. And I was like, okay, I could do cyberpunk. I could do a neo-dystopian thing. And I did. So there that is. It felt like it needed to be really different from Jet and the Valkyrie for my own sake. Like if you're gonna make an hour's worth of music, you really gotta choose a theme or a concept or something that you're gonna be happy with inhabiting that mental space for so long. It ended up perhaps being not quite as neo-dystopian as I originally imagined. but we'll kind of get there. I mean, the artwork, the artwork is darker than like the tone musically of the album, I think. I had wanted to do a really dark album, a true night experience, and then I achieved that on some of the songs. Like I wrote 5 a.m. and M29 fairly early on, and I was like, okay, we're getting into nighttime music. But then I just like writing happy music so much that I wrote a bunch of happy songs, and it ended up just being more of like a broader spectrum rather than being a reserved nighttime situation. How far along did I commission the art for Novum? Pretty far along. I commissioned that this summer. So it was in August. I think I commissioned it at the start of August. And by that point, I was done everything but The Architect. I was done every song but The Architect by midsummer, which is also why I didn't want to wait around till November. I came back from my summer vacation and I wrote The Architect, and then I was like, well, it's done. And I've had the rest of these songs done for so long. I just want to get this out. I really just want to release this. So I commissioned that in August, and it is lovely. I mean, look at that. That's money well spent. And that's by Syfy. She's a digital illustrator. You can find her on Instagram and Twitter and wherever you go on the internet. And she did a great job. We talked a lot about Novum, and she helps me kind of conceptualize the architecture of the city a lot. I had not imagined that the city's districts were split like literally into like one area that is like using grav technology to hover off the ground and then basically just dumping all of its pollution on the lower districts. That was totally her, and it was awesome. And then she was like, no, it's fine, because the Gravway, which is our whimsical, these bands all around it, the Gravway will connect all the districts, so you can physically separate these various districts if you have a main transportation system like the Gravway that joins them together. I mean, it's also like, it's album art and doesn't need to function really by the laws of architecture, city structure, anything like that. Like, it'd be fine if it was totally fantastical. But it's fun to have those conversations. Yes, Mose. So all of the streams, I'm pretty sure you can find it linked in the description. I can't remember. But I have a second channel called Finn Was Streaming, and I upload all of my streams there. So you can just search that. If you subscribe there, you get all the streams, and I do highlights from streams as well. So yes, this whole thing will be up over on Finn Was Streaming probably tomorrow at some point. Okay, so late 2021, and I've kind of made Welcome to Novum. It originally, I wonder if I have this. So Welcome to Novum, I really like so many parts of it from a musical perspective. The structure is one of the big things. But I wonder if I have the original demo here. Let's see if this is it. Oh, it is. Okay. So originally, Welcome to Novum did not have the same bridge it does in the album version. The bridge came way, way later, like 15 or 16 months after I'd made this demo. It was a long time. And it was only when I firmed up that bridge that I was like, okay, we're really doing Novum. We're doing this. This makes sense. I'm into this concept. So this is the original demo of Welcome to Novum. I haven't listened to this in a long time, but I think most of it's going to be pretty similar.
Contact light?
Oh man, it's totally different already. I forgot. So in the album version of Welcome to Novum, there is kind of my speech over the intro, this thing.
Good evening, passengers.
with
We're
voice
coming into
modulators and
Novum
everything.
now. When you disembark, follow the blinking drones to reach the gravway. Please remember to register your body augments with port security before leaving the dock. We hope you enjoyed your flight, and as always, thank you for choosing us.
And then we go into the rest of the song. In the original demo, I didn't really know what Novum was as a city yet, and I had this placeholder text, which I believe is from NASA, from an Apollo mission. And the whole little intro thing is different, so.
Contact light. Okay, engine stop. Listen, the Eagle has landed.
And then it goes into it. So I think most of this is pretty much the same. Oh, the verses are different too. I think they are. I can't remember if this version goes that far back. No, it doesn't. Okay. So the original bridge of Welcome to Novum is very different. I'll explain it after. Just listen to this. Plug and play to her virtual healing. Okay. Different bridge. Here we go.
Belly laughs from the subspace district. GMO girls with turquoise lipstick. To a visitor it seems exotic, but underneath that veneer it's the same things you know. Stressed out and wondering when he's coming home. The simple joy of playing in the falling snow. As much as we bend, we're human in the end. Red alarms as the ship gets lifted.
And then it goes back. And the rest of the song is pretty much the same. Yeah. So it's a totally different feeling. And it's, I just didn't love it. It had its own atmosphere, and I repurposed some of the lyrics to use in the second verse. Actually. I can't remember what. Oh, yeah. So these lyrics in the second verse are all different, too.
Healing's up, exo arm to gear shift. Hits the gravway and he screams to port 4. That's his future that they don't close that door. He's just another story.
And so on. So it was just, it just wasn't quite right. Didn't quite fit. When I came up with the true lyrics,
Good evening,
the true bridge,
Bug and this time.
with this whole auto-tune section,
These are the stories of the city high.
felt way better. Just like better musically, more interesting, good use of hard auto-tune to build the world a little bit. Show that we've got cyborgs and all this stuff. Of course, we got voice modulators. It's neat to hear old demos, though. So I kind of built that song in isolation. I had not conceptualized any of the rest of Novum, and then there it sat for a long time. And then much later, sometime in the summer, is when I wrote 5 a.m. 5 a.m. was the next song that came along. And the tricky thing about 5 a.m. was I wrote that was the first song I wrote after I stopped doing YouTube full time. And that's basically what it's about. So the problem was I kind of had this vague idea of what Novum ought to be. And I wasn't committed to it yet because I wrote 5 a.m. and I really liked it. And I did the whole, I did this whole video with like the hand-written lyrics. And I liked that a lot. And I was like, I does that fit? Can I really put that into Novum if it's my story? Because I think Novum should be other people's stories. Like, I can explore my own feelings through them, but they shouldn't be about Finn, per se. And then the more songs I ended up writing, the more I was like, I sort of, there's no way to avoid it. There's no way to avoid, representing myself. I did edit all the music videos. I made all the lyric videos, which I'm quite proud of. I didn't create from scratch every single visual. Like, a lot of them are from stock footage sites and whatnot. Even like the 5 a.m. one. Here, I'll show you. So that blinking city background that we have there. So I put like a lot of effects on. Is it's a looped, it's this looped video of, ooh, that is loud. Shh. It's just this looped video. Oh, that's in reverse. There we go. So it's just this looped video of like evening sunset somewhere in some city. Because even though I'm glad I had the foresight, even though I hadn't really decided if I was fully committing to Novum yet, I was like, all of these videos, all of these songs could maybe go on the album, so I'd better make their lyric videos fit. So every lyric video has so much okay, there we go. That's my reminder. I'm not opening Vegas Pro again. It messes with my extensive audio chain that everything is running through. Okay, so I was just blathering on about stuff. Doesn't matter what you missed. So I wrote 5 a.m. I had Welcome to Novum in the pocket. I knew I couldn't release it because it would ask, so many questions come from it. What is Novum? What is all of this? What place is it describing? So it's like, it doesn't work as a standalone thing. It needs to be released as part of the bigger picture. So I wrote that. I wrote age. Oh yeah, sorry. One thing I was gonna say was that 5 a.m. I really did write it at 5 a.m. I woke up one morning at 5 a.m. for some reason, and between the hours of 5 a.m. and 6 a.m., I wrote the entire song right there on that piano, and then it was done. So that was originally, I was called 5 a.m. in my notes because I wrote it at 5 a.m. And then it just rang very true for me. It was cool. Like, the whole bridge is literally just describing the hour that I wrote the music and what I was feeling at that time. Where I was like coming into the studio room, the whole city is asleep, the whole world is quiet, and I'm sitting down here and I'm making music. And, no matter what comes at me in my life and my career, it's a big comfort to know I can always just make music. I can always do that in some degree or another. I could lose my hands. I could still make music somehow. I could still find a way. Like, you can take my hearing. I could still make music. Like, I'll find a way. You can't take that away from me no matter how bad life gets. So it's very reassuring to have that, like, as a tool in my pocket as a human, you know? Um, so 5 a.m., wrote that. Then I wrote Age after my Oma passed away. And that's about, you know, fearing dementia, basically, which is tough to watch. And I fear it happening to me. True story. I really do. Because that is just a way that you become a shell of who you are. And I was starting to write other tracks around this time too. I wrote M29. I think I had the core of Lucy Lemon written, and I'd started to play it in live streams. Infinite Adventure, Fight the Moon came around this time as well. So I had all these songs now, and this is now like late 2022, early 2023. I have these bunch of songs, and they're good. You know, I'm always writing something, but like, I had those ones, and I knew they were good. They were good enough to release. They were good enough to be my next thing, whatever that collection ended up looking like. And that's when I really sat down. I think I had 5 songs, and that's when I sat down and I figured out Novum. I figured out the concept. I started to think about the city. I went back, I rewrote Welcome to Novum's lyrics a bunch of times to try and represent the city, because that title track has a lot of work to do in establishing the setting, and I wanted to make sure it did it right. So, coming up with the idea of the city's structure, I'm swapping between folders here. Whoa, there we go. Coming up with the ideas like the city structure. It's like, oh, we've got all these various districts. There's a big wealth difference and disparity between the various districts. The subspace district has got to be the top of the top, where the aristocrats live. And then there are the lower districts. One nice thing that Scythe did was all of these flecks of darkness in amongst the pink and purple lighting. That's pollution. It's pollution raining down from the upper districts onto the lower districts. Like, it's just a disaster zone. And the idea was not. The idea was a little conflicting in that part of me wanted to make Novum this paradise that you as a listener wanted to escape to, and the other part of me wanted to make it like, no, this it's just like terrible. It's like a bad place. And I ended up somewhere in the middle, where there's a lot of neat things and a lot of bad things about it, and the people there are ultimately human. And it's for some people and not for all people. I don't know, it's what it is. Did I write down the lore anywhere? No, not really. Because it got built so slowly in my mind over the course of like a year and a half. I didn't really need to write it down. It just kept building on itself more and more and more and more in my mind. And then, so probably early this year until basically August was when I was working on 2 game soundtracks that whole time. That was it for my work. And I was making the music for Novum. And it was just those 3 things. So that's when the rest of the tracks basically came around. Princess Arisu and Dobutsu at the same time. Gravway and Legacy. All came in that time. The Architect was the very last track, and it was kind of after all the others. So then made it all, shipped it out, had the artwork commissioned, and then there we are. So that's kind of like broad strokes the creation process. And we talked about Welcome to Novum a lot. But let's go down the list here. So Legacy is in many ways it is like Cloudless, which is from the Etwa the Traveler EP. Cloudless was a song that existed long before Etwa the Traveler. And I don't know if I readily have it. I think I probably do. Let's go in the old files. Oh yeah. So actually there's that. I want to load up Etwa as well. Etwa's Cloudless. Okay, so Etwa the Traveler, this is Cloudless there. You've heard that before. It's got the whole thing. The original Cloudless is on my very first album, just called Album. It's just instrumental, and it's kind of much more plinky, and it ends up being very different in many ways. But it still has this core idea. And so on. And then it was repurposed, the idea I took, and then switched it around, gave it lyrics, verses. But then, you know, even this kind of post-chorus. Made its way in some form or another. This is not something I like to do lightly, because generally speaking, I believe once you've made an idea, you've made it, and leave it alone. So I really only try and do that if I've got something that feels magical in the new version to justify dredging up the grave of the old. I did with Legacy, and I did with Cloudless. So this is the Legacy that's on the album. And we've got this, I said the intro. And then it goes into this verse I love. The bass and everything. The original Legacy is different. It's more orchestral. It's not instrumental, actually. And some of the lyrics are used and shifted around in a different way. This is, I think, 14-year-old film. Here's where it really changes from the Novum version. Let's just listen to the rest of this, because it's only another minute. This weird half idea. It's so weird listening to my voice from back then. It's not only that I sound different, but I chose different ways to sing words. I think because they sounded more proper or something. But a big motivator for me to take that idea and do something with it was that it always felt half finished. Like the core idea I adore. And it felt like it never got a chance to live up to its potential in that form. So taking that into the Novum version, oops, and giving it this new life and these whole new sections and everything. So like coming into this verse section, which I love. This whole chorus on the bridge is all different. And then it kind of comes back to the original here. But the story is wholly different. And with this whole nice long post section for satisfying fade out. So it felt like I got to finally take the idea and do something right with it, you know, that honored the original and added so much cool new stuff and make it a very Novum specific song. So, I mean, this song is a story that for me actually, here's a nice little I guess Easter egg. I've mentioned before here and there that the story of Dobutsu and Princess Arisu, it's one story in two songs, like told right after the next. The story of Legacy, I have always felt, is continued in Gravway, of all places. And it comes much later. And it's less obvious, but it is the same story in Legacy and in Gravway. Because in Legacy, we have this protagonist who comes to Novum via the Gravway, all kind of bright-eyed. And the second verse, so they're on the Gravway. I always imagine them as being on some kind of public transportation or something. And then the second verse is shouting from the track. They say, move, stand back, give her some room. Years of chats through screens. Oh, I know those screams. They stop before I reach you. So for me, I imagine this person, they come to Novum to meet their long distance relationship partner. And the long distance relationship partner is sort of waiting for them at the station, but literally as the protagonist is arriving, the partner is hit in an accident of some kind, and it's just like it feels like such a powerful steal in the sense of like, wow, your story was supposed to just be starting, and instead it's ending, and it's unfair, but that's what makes it powerful. And then the rest of Legacy goes on to talk about sort of being a mariner adrift. And it's really one of those songs with happy vibes, sad lyrics. Because I mean, the end of that bridge line is, I'll be a shipwreck soon, but I'll be with you. So, I mean, suicide, there's no two ways to figure that one out. And then the whole kind of, it's weird. There's not really a chorus or anything. I don't know how to title the sections, but the big section in Legacy is that the friends and family they bury both of them simultaneously, and they're wedded post-death, or like dying sort of thing. It was kind of intentionally vague there. I didn't need to be super specific. Wedding bells sound off, lowered down, arms crossed. I know I'll not be long. A legacy lost, a line has been crossed. Oh no, so it was intended that the person's getting visited is getting buried. I haven't. Yeah, I mean, a lot of this stuff is like you couldn't have possibly known without me explaining it now, Gregory. Um, but this is the real behind the scenes stuff. So if you don't want your interpretations of the track spoiled, this is not the stream for you. Um, so sorry, they're not both lowered down. Just the person who was in the accident was. But this ruins our protagonist's life pretty hard. And Gravway is about addiction and kind of the tunnel they go down there. And there's a glimmer in the middle of Gravway where it's all hopeful, but they kind of descend back into it. And there really is no happy ending there. Because not all stories get happy endings. So anyways, but then Fight the Moon happens, and it's just pure fun. And Fight the Moon was written, inspired very much, in fact, from my Dungeons and Dragons stuff. As like a good example of you know, you can get as old as you want, but you can keep imagining. And it was came out of a conversation. I can't remember exactly how it came up, but I was flying with my friend last year to Vancouver. Oh yeah, I had one or two of the songs. Oh yeah, because I've been 2022. So I had one or two of the songs already. I was flying with them to Vancouver, and we got to talking something about like what kind of goofy song could I make, and the concept of making a song about fighting the moon came up, and for some reason it was weirdly compelling to me, but I didn't really know what I could do with it because that as a concept alone is really not enough to make a song stand. But once I got a bigger picture of, well, that's kind of just one example of keeping your imagination alive as you get older. And then that idea of getting older and still, imagining craziness and still getting up to mischief and not letting that kind of that aspect of your mind that children so readily access and adults we kind of eschew as the real world weighs us down. That's what Fight the Moon is all about. It's so there's those verses there are kind of about what imagination to me was like at different ages, at different stages in my life. And kind of a big example of it that I use for my adult life is my Dungeons and Dragons stuff. So that third verse, perched around a table, spinning rumors to gold, a group hallucination of the story we told. I'll keep on creating even as I grow old. It's literally just describing playing Dungeons and Dragons with your friends. That's the whole verse. So other verses are like different examples and that, I mean, whatnot here and there, but that's where Fight the Moon came from. So there's no bad vibes about Fight the Moon. It's purely a happy song, and it felt for much of the album's existence, Fight the Moon was going to be the second song right after Welcome to Novum. But Legacy felt like a deeper, more impactful introduction to the city. It also name drops certain parts of the city, like the Gravway. And Fight the Moon was more of a standalone thing, which is why I ended up releasing it as one of the first singles, because it felt like a really good, happy, poppy, peppy, fun single. That's Fight the Moon. Lucy Lemon. I realize I'm not talking too much musically about all of this stuff. Well, I guess I kind of am. I mean, honestly, I don't know what to say about Fight the Moon musically. There's not a single part about it that necessarily blows my mind, except that maybe the production is, like the production values I think are the best I've ever done on a song, especially on a pop song. Like Fight the Moon feels top of the tops for me. But there's not a specific part of it that is blowing my mind. There's not a specific part of Fight the Moon that's like a 10 out of 10 moment. Legacy has a couple of them. Fight the Moon doesn't for me, but it's all so solid. There's no weak part. It's such a strong contender. The lyrics are goofy and sing along, and that's fine to have, you know. But it just is. It's just a strong song all around. I did actually fight the moon in order to make Fight the Moon. It's true. Okay, so Lucy Lemon. Lucy Lemon, what a story here. What a story, Mark. So Lucy Lemon, people who have been in the late night piano live streams know that I've played that on live streams for a long time. For me, in that way, it was similar to Valkyrie. So my last album, Jet and the Valkyrie, um, the first real track past the overture is Valkyrie. And I played that in streams a long time building up to the release of Jet and the Valkyrie as an album. And I did the same thing with Lucy Lemon. The difference is that Valkyrie I always knew was going in the album, and Lucy Lemon I was never sure. It was never quite good enough. The production, like the studio version, was never quite good enough. The core concept is fun, and it tells a cool story. And I had the acoustic version that I was playing in the streams, and people loved it. And I was like, this is great. Why can't I make the studio version work? I really couldn't. And I only ever managed to figure it out. Actually, I'm not connected, but I only ever figured it out when I came up with this riff. And so on. And that saved Lucy Lemon. If you listen to the studio version and you take away that riff and then change nothing else, that's basically what it was like before, and I wasn't happy with releasing that out. My only real concern with the riff is that I came up with it and I recorded it and I felt good about it. And then too long after that, when it was already locked in, I was like, oh my God, it's just the riff to Homecoming by Kanye West. And I thought about it in my bed, and I jumped out of bed, and I went downstairs, I turned on my computer, I was like, I have to hear Homecoming. I have to hear Homecoming now. Is it really just that? And it's not exactly that. It ended up being, it's different enough that I was like, it's fine, it's okay. But I had such a moment of panic because I was like, that riff saved the song. Did I just subconsciously steal that because I like Homecoming? Which is for sure some degree of how that happened, of how that came about. I have no doubt in my mind. I hadn't thought about the song in years, but it clearly it's buried in my mind somewhere. But it really saved Lucy Lemon. Because the idea was fun, and I wrote Lucy Lemon at a time when I was just trying to write stories for Novum. I had Novum in my mind. Lucy Lemon does a lot of world building on its own. Talks about like the day in the life of a citizen of Novum, which I really wanted to do. She name drops a couple districts and other parts of it. I wanted the concept of the song to go in, but making the music happen was not easy. I wrote Lucy Lemon at like the start. Oh no, at probably like July, August, September of 2022. I wrote it, and then I started playing it in live streams then, and the studio version wasn't good enough, and I left and it was done. And it wasn't good enough until late August of this year, 2023. Almost a year later, that riff came and saved the day. And that is how Lucy Lemon got included. For a long time, I was listening to my Novum track list as I was building it, and it was just Welcome to Novum, Fight the Moon, Infinite Adventure. Boom, done. And I thought that was just going to be the start, the opening. So I'm happy Lucy Lemon made it in, because I know people really wanted it to be in. Infinite Adventure. Duh! Again, this is an example of like, Novum was supposed to be a darker album, but I like writing happy music. And Infinite Adventure is similarly to Fight the Moon. It's just good times. It's just, there's not even necessarily a story. in my mind, it's not about a narrative. It's not about capturing character development or anything. It's kind of just about capturing a feeling. And that feeling is infinite adventure. This kind of willingness to. Very impressed you actually went on an infinite adventure in order to make infinite adventure. The things I do for my music. So it's just kind of capturing that atmosphere of boundless, explosive happiness with no demons in the back. Nothing over your shoulder. Just like a summer day when you go out all day long and you don't know exactly what you're going to do, but it's sunny and beautiful and warm and you're just going to go adventure. And then there's some of the lyrics are really fun. Honestly, the lyrics on Infinite Adventure as a whole structure might be are some of my favorite lyrics on Novum for sure. Let me pull these up. Let me pull these bad boys up. And it's mostly because there's a lot of stuff interwoven into them. And they're really vague. They're really like... They are really just intentionally vague. But there are callbacks and stuff in them. So, like, spider leaps from tree, parachute of silk, turns a simple breeze into infinite adventure. All of these, every verse is just an example of the feeling I'm trying to capture. And it takes place, like, over periods of time and different conceptions of reality. But one of the things I wanted to get across is that there's something that all of these different examples, the 4 examples over 2 verses, there's something in common that they all have, and that's infinite adventure. And I kind of pictured it in my mind like reincarnation. Like maybe these examples are all the same people in different lifetimes, which is why there are similarities and kind of common hooks. So, for example, spider leaps from tree, parachute of silk. Lovers in Berlin, he weaves silk. Street King Marrakesh rainbow, ruby thief, noble pious king wears a ruby ring. So I had this concept of that maybe this is just one person or a few people reincarnating over and over again. And each time they're in vastly different circumstances. They're a spider, they're a street kid, they're a king, they're lovers in Berlin. But every time, you know, they kind of have these similar, there's some things, silk and rubies, that they keep, there's something about them they keep loving. And also their love for infinite adventure. Like they'll find it, they'll build it somehow. They'll create some kind of way to do that. And then it's just fun. It's just loud and fun. And I had not done a synth solo in a song in a long time. Infinite Adventure. What's next? Let me see. Gravway. Oh, Gravway. Where is Gravway? Where's my Gravway? Hold on a sec. I think I can do this a little cleaner. Yeah, there we go. So Gravway is the continuation of Legacy. Let's do that. Continuation of Legacy. And that's kind of just this. We have this poor destroyed person from the outcome of Legacy. Now Gravway. Now they've settled in Novum, and they're a citizen, and they're just screaming down the Gravway, struggling with their problems and their addictions. Just like the Gravway is how they escape from their demons, but the Gravway in itself is a dangerous demon. And honestly, mostly I wanted a song that you could drive to. I really wanted a driving song, like, you know, top open, blaring this out of the speakers, just going to that guitar riff, speeding up when it hits. That's what I want. Firing on all cylinders. Plus, I'd never really written a metal song, and I would not call this a metal song. It's too weird and bizarre, and it goes on a journey. But that main riff is 100% Rammstein with the synths and with the guitar and just with the drums very specifically. So it's a Rammstein drum thing that just keeps that beat going. Just so it was just so fun to make. It's like baby's first steps into writing metal music. But it's just I mean, so the two parts of Gravway, that whole main riff, and then this middle section, which is different tempo, different pace, different everything. These were originally two different song ideas entirely, and I could not flesh either of them out. I could not get a satisfying way to make them into two individual songs. So I said, screw it. And I just combined them into one because they were in the same key. That's literally the only reason. And it made Gravway. And I was, even now, I'm like, good enough, I guess. Because the individual ideas are really cool, but the structure is such a, what a mess. What a bizarre song. It's cool. But yeah, it's just, it's wacky and a half. At the same time, I mean, there's honestly not too much to say about this one. I wrote it as a duet. I was super stoked that Anne was willing to sing on it. I'd always intended for it to be sung by two people. If I for some reason had not been able to get a female vocalist to sing this, I just wouldn't have made it. Wouldn't have released it. Like, I wouldn't have fudged it to try and just me sing both parts or something. There are times where I really just want to, I try and write like a top 40 pop song, almost as a theory exercise, kind of to see if I can, as a theory and as a production exercise. Now, it's not to say the song is meaningless. Like, it draws from a way I felt post a certain relationship, and there's a lot I like about it. But it's certainly like, I sat down and wrote it being like, all right, I'm going to write a pop song. I'm going to write a pop duet. And this is what happened. It ended up being very Chainsmokers-esque. I mean, what else is there to say? It's neat. Cool song. That's where we are. I'll talk about, honestly, I realize I'm kind of skipping over the videos, which are part of the picture. But I've got no plan here. We'll get to those. We'll get to them. Dobutsu. So the Dobutsu and Princess Arisu journey, one of the last things I wrote for Novum, and one of the individual songs I'm kind of happiest with, or stories I'm happiest with. The story of Arisu is, I mean, essentially we have our protagonist, Princess Arisu. The first song, Dobutsu, is sung, actually, here's a better way to explain it. It's almost better to imagine Dobutsu as a prequel that was released after the original of Princess Arisu, which is that we have this girl. I kind of imagined her as like sort of a early teenage Japanese girl, which is why the preceding song is in Japanese. I can't tell you why that's the image that came to mind. It just is. And I was like, well, I guess that's who this song is about. There's the picture in my mind. Who clearly does not get along well with her parents. Particularly bats heads with her mother. Gets into trouble in the streets. But the real linchpin is in the bridge, which is when her father, who is kind of the bridge between these two worlds, just trying to keep everyone together, says, your mother loves you, she's just afraid that you'll be like her. So immediately we have insight into the mom, who's this like overprotective mom. It's like, oh, you're not overprotective for no reason. It's because you were like your daughter when you were her age, and you got hurt, you got into trouble, you damaged yourself, and you don't want that for her. You're just not good at communicating that. And then I love this where the father says, "So you'll be like her, but that's why I loved her then. Go be with your friends." I adore that lyric. There is so much to unpack there, and it's like that's why I loved her then. It's like, oh, I'm not like begrudging you, my daughter. Like that's why I love your mom too, and that's in you as well. So go be with your friends. Like I'll deal with your mom. You'll be fine. And then the other aspect of that, it's like that's why I loved her then, and it's part of why I love you too. But then that's why I loved her then. And it is not clear if the father still loves the mother now. It's unclear what state the relationship is in now, and I think it was so fascinating to leave that as an unknown and to say it's ultimately is the relationship between the mother and the father is not the point of the story. It's about Arisu. So we just get that snippet into their lives, and then he says, "Go off," and we go off as well. We go with Arisu, and she goes out howling at the moon, leaving the zoo, and we're just kind of left to wonder at what that relationship is actually like now. Knowing all that, then when we go back to Dobutsu, Dobutsu is part of the Princess Arisu story. It is sung by the mother in this narrative. And it's sung Japanese. I kind of imagine that as like, I know as the son of immigrants that at home, your parents will often speak the language of the country where you came from. So like my mom always spoke German at home. But I speak English primarily, despite understanding German. Or we speak in like Denglish, which is Deutsch and English. So that each generation, you get more anglicized. So I thought that'd be a neat angle to represent in Arisu singing her song, or her song being sung in English, but her mother's being sung in Japanese as kind of a first generation immigrant to Novum from Japan. Which I also realized as I conceptualized, I guess Novum like is Earth, exists on Earth somewhere. All right, it exists on Earth somewhere. Great. So this whole song, there are not that many lyrics, partially because I wanted it to be a little bit spacey and ethereal, but essentially the narrative here is that it's a mother's lament, and she is looking at her daughter Arisu, and saying like, my daughter is like this animal, this beast. She goes out into the streets and messes around. Like this is not how I raised her. And ultimately she doesn't really come to any peace with it. She's just like trying to make sense of it and support her daughter while not fully getting it. Like she doesn't really know how to communicate with her daughter. A point that is emphasized by the mother song and the daughter song being in two different languages. So interestingly, the musicality of Dobutsu and Princess Arisu from a strictly musical angle, they're actually among my least favorites on the album. But the story I love. To do this story in two parts from two perspectives, with the mother, father, and Arisu, I was very happy to build that and conceptualize it. To do a single story over two songs is a neat idea in and of itself, and I was happy with how the structure all worked out. But there certainly was, I kind of sacrificed some of the musical greatness that could have been, I think, in order to better serve the narrative, which is fine to do sometimes. I think it's fine to do sometimes. You can't do it all the time. But that's those ones. Moving on to Age. I mean, Age, I honestly don't want to talk about it too much. Mostly because I don't like talking about it too much. It's about dementia and your I guess the elders in your family drifting away, and they're alive technically, but anyways. I talked about 5am a little bit earlier. M29, again, kind of not too much to say. It was a very intentional sequel to Caldwell 39 from Etoile the Traveler. I wanted to make another lo-fi song. I wanted to do something spacey and ethereal. And I realized that what I wanted is like, oh, do I just want to write Caldwell 39 again? Okay, well, if I'm going to do this, I can do that as a concept, but I can't do it musically. So musically, it's very different. It's lo-fi, but it's a radically different pace and feeling. And it's just peaceful and great, and I love it. And there's no story there. Part of the tricky thing with Novum was choosing which of these songs get to go in. And I was like, M29 is such a good atmosphere builder. But is it a story of Novum? Does it belong? And there were some of these songs I ultimately said, it's like, I guess I can take some further reaching liberties than I initially expected to. Which I can't decide. I mean, like, all of these songs I'm proud of. I wanted to release them. But I think I can't decide whether Novum would have been better served if I had stayed more true to the vision of this neo-dystopian city. The songs are kind of dark and atmospheric, and they're stories of the people in the city. Like, on the one hand, if I'd stuck to that, I think the album would have been more cohesive. On the other hand, I would have had to not use some great ideas. So, just can't decide. Who knows? And then The Architect. Here's what we're going to do. In order to talk about The Architect, I need to show the videos as well. The video to The Architect is really key to understanding the whole picture. Holy cow, there's so much going on there. There's so much lore. But let's just do a brief snapshot here. So, something you'll find in all of the albums, whether they are like the CG of Welcome to Novum, whether they are the more like you've got a stationary symbols and stuff like and at the same time, you're gonna find some common similarities between all of these. And I think that when I put these pictures next to you, it's gonna be actually that's not a great example. It's gonna be kind of apparent some of these similarities. I mean, I guess whatever. You can go there. Let's do one more. Let's take from I wish the thumbnails were more specific to what I have in mind, but it is what it is. Okay, actually, here's just a still. So there are some real common visuals between everything. There is the color palette was established really early on. The color palette of it's like Novum is going to be pink and purple, and kind of pink, purple, red. It exists somewhere in there, and that rings true in every single one of the videos. It rings true in most of the videos. There are a couple exceptions. Lucy Lemon is sepia toned because it's kind of hearkening back to like the olden days of A Private Eye. And there, like 5am is all black and white. Because even that back then, I had still only started to build the idea of Novum as an album. I hadn't really like completed the picture yet. But generally speaking, Novum exists in this universe that Novum exists in. The whole world is sweet, the dancing robot gif. That's another example. So on all of the video edits, Um, everything is like pink, purple, red toned. Novum exists. I want to find a very specific one. Here's one of. Oh yeah, so this is like a snapshot from the architect as well. Everything, all the videos, all their videos have certain shared filters. Whoa, stop. And they, all of these filters are kind of pink and purple and red with this kind of grid hex to them as if you're looking at them through a monitor, through a screen. So in my mind, the solar system that Novum is in, that Earth Novum is in, the sun's light is not yellow. It's kind of this, or it's not solely yellow. It is kind of purpley. And every lyric video, with those couple exceptions, represent that. In every, you notice if you go back and watch Welcome to Novum, interior shots don't respect that rule because an interior space has its own lighting. But every shot that is outside has that purple filter on it to represent the sun's rays coming down. And that is kind of true everywhere. And at the same time, the whole city. So here I have like the upper districts floating over the lower districts as represented in the album art. So you can see like there's our upper city, there's our upper city, there's our lower city, there is our lower city. So I like it's all connected. It's all a web. I had conceptualized all of this as I was making the lyric videos. And part of the nice thing is I made most of them in one go. I made like 9 of the 13 videos in a 3-month span, which let me stick to this vision and be cohesive with it, which is really cool. Because when I look back at these videos, I'm like, okay, I can see all the hints. I can see all the clues that we're in Novum, all of these signifiers. Beyond that, the videos are more standalone. And that's because there's not an overarching narrative. Like we're dealing with a fairly anthologic collection of music. So as long as they're in Novum, that's fine. That's good. We're doing it. I mean, the real... and they're also... So even like between video segments like this... So this particular, oh, weird. Here's, okay, very weird thing, because I just got an email. I just got an email from the guy that made the Duck song. You know, then he waddled away, waddle, 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 till the very next day. We have gotten to know each other. Internet's a weird place. Anyways, totally unrelated to Novum. Yeah, internet's a very weird place, but totally unrelated to Novum. So I'm gonna stay focused. So one of the big things I like a lot is that the opening shot. If we look at the Novum videos as one whole body of work, then the opening shot, we have this particular ship, and that lines up with the very closing shot in The Architect, which is the last video. Look, it's that same ship. How about that? So the videos try and tell their own stories as well. I realized when I was making the videos, I could just do kind of like still images and then play the audio over it. But I want to do something more. And I'm reasonably happy with how all the lyric videos came out. Certainly, Welcome to Novum, real cool. I did not make most of these visuals. And by most, I mean all. I did the lyrics, but I did not do the video design stuff. But it's cool. This is like just so a cool way to show Novum, to represent it with kind of a CG video to build this cyberpunk world, you know? and just to say, like, here's some of the crazy stuff that's out there. Hoverboards and androids and all of this stuff, you know? Like, who knows what's going on there? A tech wizard. But I don't think I can take too much of the credit for that, because Savage Rust did all of the animations. And I just kind of pieced things together and did some of the coloring and the lyrics. But still, it's cool. It's cool to have that as a lyric video. I'm happy that that was the first announced. It like finally all came together. I'm like, I can finally release Welcome to Novum a year and a half after I finished it. And it can be the start of this story, start of this journey. The other lyric videos are much more simple, because I knew I was making one for every single song. So like Legacy, and most of them feature some kind of still image, all of a person of some kind, which is typically the protagonist of that particular story. And others, they're just kind of fairly simple lyric videos, but they're nice. They're hopefully not like overwhelming. I showed my grandmother one. She did not understand it, but I soldiered on anyways. She's like, I'm trying to listen to the music. Why is all this stuff happening on screen? I'm like, it's a lyric video. Those are the lyrics, and anyways. But most of them, there's not too much to say. They try and represent their song the best they can. Lucy Lemon is it's all kind of sepia, hard-bitten, private eye vibe. And we've got this, that same glistening image of Lucy. Some of them are slightly more complex, like Infinite Adventure goes through some visual changes. Whoa, we're back. But, oh yeah, neat space stuff. But I really wanted to save like the beefy videos for Welcome to Novum and for the Architect, for the opener and for the closer. And the Architect is my goodness. The Architect is the lore dump that people have been handing me about. So I wrote the whole rest of the album, and I had it in order as it is now and everything. And I just couldn't let it end with M29. M29 is beautiful, but it was not dramatic enough. It was not the big closer that I wanted. And it just felt so much like a piece of the Novum puzzle was missing. The Architect, some of the ideas in the Architect. Oh, what a hero, Oscar. Well, you can rest easy. I don't think we'll be here for too much longer. Your data will hopefully survive. So the Novum was so close to done, and it was missing something. And I had so many half ideas from over the 2 years I'd built Novum, and some of them were good and were worth exploring. I couldn't find a way to do it. I mentioned at some point in the summer that I was like, okay, I posted on Instagram that's like I just finished up these 2 game soundtracks. I'm taking some time off, and I did. I took 6 weeks off, and like I went to Vancouver on a trip, and I had summer vacation. When I came back from it, I'd been listening to the other 12 tracks of Novum the whole time, trying to figure out what was missing. And I came back, and I wrote the skeleton of the Architect using a couple of older ideas that I had. And then, like, most of it was new, but a couple of those older ideas, at least as a starting place. I wrote that, and I was like, well, this is it, of course. And it was just, this has blown my mind since day one. Since it's conceptualizing to now the finished studio version, it took me a long time. out of summer vacation, I did not take on any more work. I spent 3 weeks making The Architect. Just the music. It was the only thing I did every day for 3 weeks. Because it's such a long piece. It's such an extravaganza. And I was down in like I was in a hole building this, but what a time it was to be able to to bring the whole album together. It really needs The Architect. Novum needs it to feel complete. And as a standalone piece, I still think it's one of the finest pieces of music I've ever composed. The journey goes on from this jazzy piano at the start. Even when the instruments come in, it feels really different from the rest of the Novum. But then here, like by the end, what places we've gone to, the whole journey all the way through, it's bananas to me. And I'm just so happy with how it sounds. It wraps it up. It closes the album. It has so many cool musical ideas, and it all works as one piece. It does what Gravway failed to do, which is exist as a pure and complete piece and not feel like I just smashed a bunch of ideas together. And I don't really want to over-explain it. I think honestly it explains itself pretty well. It's certainly sung from my perspective. It's me talking. But it's me, and here's kind of like, I think probably the high point of the lore, which we'll close the stream on. This is not only sung from my perspective. Where the song comes from, it is me, dealing with my challenges and like getting older. As I get older, I just turned 30, and just trying to navigate life and continue that. However, from the song's perspective, or rather, from where the song comes from, it is sung by me. In the context of Novum, as a universe, this song is sung by Itwa the Traveler. And The Architect is the key piece that binds Itwa the Traveler and Novum together. Because Itwa the Traveler is the architect of Novum. Now, this is not mentioned explicitly in any of the stories. It is alluded to in The Architect. But as far as how I have imagined the lore in my mind, that is how I have imagined it, which is part of why we see Itwa. And some people, when I started doing the Welcome to Novum, when I did those promos where we see, here's the first teaser actually, where we see Itwa on the ship. People are like, oh, it's weird to see Itwa running around, but like everyone immediately recognizes it's like it's not just some astronaut, specifically it's Itwa the Traveler. By the design of the suit. Let me see if I can pull that picture up again. So there are slight differences, and it's mostly in the coloring, but it's the same suit. There are the details that we changed, the details that got changed is really like, it's kind of the difference between the mediums in my mind, between like CGI video and a still image. But so how I imagined the story and how Novum fits into Itwa the Traveler. Let me show ya. Okay. So in the whole start of The Architect, we open, we have title screen, our planet that Novum is on, Earth. And here we see our first glimpses of Novum. And I think something that no one commented on the video or said directly, but one thing I will point out, because it was very much by design, is that at the start of the Architect, this whole first sequence, the shots of Novum we see are not like the other videos. We are not seeing a cyberpunk city here. We're seeing a city under that same purple sun, but it's like it's a sprawl, it's a metropolitan sprawl, but it's not like a sci-fi city. Some of the buildings are a little sci-fi, but it's not like a sci-fi city. It's just a common day, a regular city. And that is because the way that Novum fits into Itoa the Traveler is that this portion of the song takes place chronologically before Itoa the Traveler EP. And Itoa constructs Novum. He builds this much. And then becomes disillusioned. So he builds all of this, becomes disillusioned, and then what does he do? What does he do? Goes to space. So this bridge, this instrumental bridge with the solos in it where we're traveling across space, that's because this takes place during the events of Itoa the Traveler, the EP. This is Itoa's view as he's going on his ship through space. He's seeing these brilliant, beautiful sights. He's seeing all this wonder. There's no one to share it with, so he comes back home. As we're getting towards the end of that EP, he comes back home, but there's time dilation in space, whatnot. He's been gone for however long. So even though he comes back home, when he comes back, time has passed, and the city is now futuristic. So Novum has changed while he's gone. And he comes back, and it's, like, I built this, but it's different. You know, I wasn't here the whole time. I've been gone however many years. And he and I collectively, like, me as the songwriter, and he as the character who is the architect who's living it, comes to some kind of accord with the human species and his own journey and how it relates, his relationship to other people. It's a real catharsis that the architect goes through, thinking back, on the journey so far. And that's why, so then we have these images of all of the stories of Novum, all of these things. And the very last story that we see is, of course, the story of the architect, Itoa the Traveler. So, here's your plot twist, I guess. On the album art, this is Itoa the Traveler, but he is not wearing his spacesuit. Because he's home, he's on Novum, and he doesn't need to wear it. So this is Itoa outside of his spacesuit as the architect. That's there's kind of your twist. So he's there in the song as well. So it is joined together. Another big reason why I wanted the color of Novum to be kind of pink and purple and red is because that lines up. In I don't know if I'd call it a prequel album. Because it takes place both before and after the journey. It surrounds Itoa. It surrounds Itoa. And of course we end here with Itoa singing this farewell from Novum. Hope you enjoyed your time. And we still have the ship that he used for his journey orbiting the planet. And we end seeing the ship and seeing the whole planet is just like covered in city, our last view of the Novum journey is seeing all of that, looking down on Novum from space, from the perspective of the ship that Itwa is no longer on. Woo! How about that? So that's kind of the whole journey. And I really didn't want to make this about Itwa the Traveler. I really love the concept of him being the architect, which is why I put it in. But the album is not really about him, because all of these stories, it's not clear when they take place, but they could take place before he's gone, after he's gone. Some of them have to take place after, because they reference specific kind of sci-fi concepts that could only have sprung up after, like the Gravway, because we don't have something like that in modern times. Most of this, in my mind, takes place after Itwa has left on his journey and before he has come back. But he has come back, and it is kind of that's our link between the two albums. There is, I can say that with absolute certainty, there is no canonical link between Novum and Jet and the Valkyrie. I considered also putting in some kind of nod to Jet and the Valkyrie, but at some point it seemed like this is like kind of, it feels like fan service for all of 3 people who are going to be deep in on the lore at the cost of musicality. So no, it's fine. But Itwa and Novum are certainly bound together. And I like that this leaves the door open for the future, if I want to bring them in somewhere in the greater like FinMK universe. Itwa is back on Earth. And all of it's possible. So gosh, there we are. That's kind of the lore of Novum. And I hope you enjoyed. I really did just like ramble for an hour and a half. But I don't think there's anything else I really want to say. I think, I don't want to over-explain. Except with the architect. That whole narrative I wanted to over-explain. But I think a lot of the power of music is that songs mean different things to different people. And although the songs of Novum are in a joined concept, they don't share they don't have a shared narrative. So if I don't want to break down every single song, because that might reduce the impact of what it means to you. Like it can mean a thing to me. Some of these are very personal songs to me. Some of them are stories that I wrote with a narrative in mind that's only kind of alluded to in the lyrics. But ultimately, the main thing that I wanted to build here is the city, is the setting. So Novum is built, and the stories that take place in it are yours to interpret however you please. So thanks very much for hanging out. I got to have me some dinner. My goodness. And otherwise, I will be back in a couple of days with Late Night Piano. And Novum merch is coming out later this week, almost for sure. I've been facing frustrating delays on the back end. But Novum merch and older merch is coming back. I've got an announcement about it and everything. So thanks for hanging out. Hope you enjoyed. Have some dinner and drink water. Stay hydrated. And I shall see you in a couple days. Okay, bye-bye.